I'm Shani Reichman. I'm the Deputy Director of IPF Atid at Israel Policy Forum. For those who don't know, Israel Policy Forum is an organization that was created to provide support for the Oslo peace process back in the 90s among the American Jewish community and in Washington. And we still do that work of advancing the late Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin's vision for peace by ensuring that Israel remains Jewish, democratic, and secure by way of a two-state solution. IPF Atid is our Young Professionals Network, and that is who arranged this call, but it is for everyone regardless of their age. So the purpose of this call was to get out the vote for the World Zionist Congress and provide a little bit of background on what it is, what it means, why it's important, and help you get a better sense of the slates. So I'm now going to hand it over to Margaux Goldberg, one of our lay leaders, who will speak a bit more about that.
Great, thank you, Shani. My name is Margaux Goldberg, and I am a 2019 Charles Bronfman IPF Atid convener, which means I got to spend a few days back in November meeting with young professionals to learn about Israeli politics and policy. And I'm continuing to work advocating for a two-state solution back in my home community in Baltimore, where I'm a high school biology teacher. I'm in my classroom right now. And the work that I do with neighborhood engagement and social action in my synagogue. Before working with IPF Atid, I had actually never heard of the World Zionist Congress. And when I brought this back to my shul, I was not the only one. And so I'm really excited to share this program today, where we'll be talking with a representative from the American Zionist movement, who is administering the elections here in the US, as well as representatives from 4 of the slates that are running campaigns for representation in this year's World Zionist Congress. So just to summarize our agenda, we're going to hear from Jeff Becker from the American Zionist movement, who will be giving us some background information about what the World Zionist Congress is and what these elections are all about. And then we'll turn the floor over to our representatives from Arza, Dorshet, Oravet Zion, Hatikva, and Merkaz. So each of our representatives will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and their slate, and afterwards we'll open up the conversation to questions from participants in the call. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Jeff Becker, who is the US election coordinator for the World Zionist Congress. He, along with the rest of the AZM team, are responsible for administering the US election for the 2020 World Zionist Congress. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Margaux. First, I want to thank you and Shani, along with the rest of the IPF Atid team, for hosting this webinar. So the US election of the World Zionist Congress is a really interesting topic because the Congress itself is actually a bit of a paradox. Usually when people learn about the World Zionist Congress, they learn about it as this isolated historical event which took place in 1897, as opposed to what it really is in its modern day form. The reality is that the World Zionist Congress still exists today and has significantly more resources than it did back in 1897 when it was formed by Theodore Herzl. In its modern form, the World Zionist Congress holds significant political clout as the Congress oversees some of Israel's major national institutions. Specifically, the World Zionist Congress determines the funding and the policies for the World Zionist Organization, Jewish Agency for Israel, Karen Kayemet JNF, and the Karen Hayasod. These organizations collectively spend $1 billion a year through a mixture of grants from the Israeli government, revenues generated from land ownership, and private donations. The Congress is important because it's an event which happens once only every 5 years. It allows Israel and the Jewish diaspora to come together and determine the budgets, policies, and leadership of these 4 national institutions. The Congress is the global parliament of the Jewish people, so the representatives at the Congress represent 3 different regions of the world. The first is Israel with 38% of the total number of delegates, the United States of America with 29%, and other countries of the diaspora with 33%. How the delegates are chosen varies by each region. The United States determines the makeup of its delegation with a parliamentary style election, similar to Israel actually, except this election only happens once every 5 years and not 3 times every 2 years. So currently in the 2020 US election of the World Zionist Congress, there are 15 slates representing different religious denominations and political ideologies vying to make up the 29% of the American delegation to the 2020 World Zionist Congress, which will be held in October in Jerusalem. So kind of to conclude, if you ever want to know how to be involved in this rare opportunity, just go to www.zionistelection.org. Anyone who is Jewish, over 18, a permanent resident of the United States can vote in this election. It's done online, and voting will be open on zionistelection.org until March 11th.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about the Congress, the elections, why people should get out and vote?
That's all I have for right now, but
Okay.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to come on and share a little bit. But unfortunately, I have to go back and tend to the administering of the election, as with a big voter turnout, as we've currently seen. It's a lot of work that goes into it. So
Great.
thank
Do you
you.
mind just sharing how the voter turnout compares to previous years, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So we did have a 400% increase in first day voting. So we had in 2015, that was the last election, there was about 1,900 votes on the first day. And this year we had about 10,000. And for the first couple weeks, we've seen a increase in about 200% voter turnout. So for the first 2 weeks specifically, we're about at the halfway point coming up on Friday. We'll also see a 200% increase. So, we're almost for the halfway turnout, we're almost at double the amount of voters as we were in 2015.
Great,
Wow.
thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Jeff. We'll let you get back to manning the polls. Yeah, we look forward to seeing what the results of this election are going to be in a few weeks.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to turn the floor over to our representatives from different slates who are running for representation in the World Zionist Congress. So today we have from Arza, Rabbi Josh Weinberg. From Dorshe Torah V'Tzion, we have Rabbi Jason Herman. From Hatikva, we have Talia Elliot. And from Merkaz, we have Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove. So thank you all for being here today. Firstly, I'd like us to each just maybe have an opportunity to introduce ourselves and your platform, and why it is that you are choosing to represent the platform that you are representing. So I don't know if you've got like a volunteer who would like to go first. I tried to make it equitable by being alphabetical in order, but I'm just gonna let people take it away.
I'm happy to to go first, sure. First of all, hi, Rabbi Josh Weinberg for ARTSA and the Reform and Reconstructionist movement. It's really an honor to be here. Thanks to IPF for hosting us, and quite an honor for me to be with my esteemed colleagues who have worked with. I think that we're all friends, I think we can say here on the, so we all have the opportunity to share. And I just want to say that apropos Jeff's introduction, that this is really the only democratic opportunity that we as Jews living outside of the state of Israel have to have our voices be heard in Israel. There are lots of other ways to have your voice be heard, but this is really the only democratic that we can participate in an electoral process to do that. So I think it's exciting that it comes only once every 5 years. I'm looking forward to representing our movements, of course. Our platform is very, very clear. We are running on two main issues. One is the issue of religious pluralism and equality in Israel, and I know that we share that with some others, to say that right now we need to change what it means to be Jewish in the Jewish state, essentially, and that means ending the ultra-Orthodox monopoly on religious life. It means the recognition of Reform and Conservative and Reconstructionist and other forms of other Jewish movements, and being able to provide Israelis with the alternatives that I think so many of them are searching for. That's one. And the other is that we believe that it's not proper for Jewish public philanthropic dollars to fund settlement funding in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. And we have played a very, very active role on that in the past, and are looking to make a major impact in that area. I could say more, but let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Josh. Would someone else like to take a go at their platform, introduce yourself, and why you're representing your organization and its platform?
Well, I think we'll keep going alphabetical if that's okay. So I'm Rabbi Jason Herman, representing Dorshei Torah V'Tzion, which is a coalition of Yeshivat Chovei Torah Rabbinical School, as well as the International Rabbinic Fellowship, the PPORAT, which is the People for Orthodox Renaissance in Torah, and JOFO, the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance. So it is a pleasure being with all of you. And again, my colleagues and friends, and thank you to the Israel Policy Forum and Atid for hosting this. It's really a great pleasure being with all of you. So among the slates here, I think this is actually, we're the one slate on this forum that is our first time running. We decided to join this time because while there's other Orthodox slates running, this time there's actually 3 Orthodox slates running, whereas previously there had been 1. We felt that there needed to be representation from different parts of the Orthodox community with sort of slight differences in platforms. So we were coming at this from a religious perspective that we still believe in the values of Torah as well as the values of Zionism. And we wanted to see, funding go to those type of institutions. But similar to what Rabbi Weinberg said, we also felt that Israel should be a place for all Jews. Oftentimes that Orthodox parties have stopped that. And we wanted to be able to be the Orthodox voice that was actually going to open up Israel to everybody in terms of religious pluralism, other issues, things like at the Kotel, but also there are Orthodox Jews that sometimes didn't fit into the way in which the Israeli government was running things. We wanted to be a voice also for Orthodox Jews that were excluded and Orthodox Jews that didn't have a voice. To come to the issues of peace and security, which is a part of our platform, if one were to look at the landscape of American Jewry, but really world Jewry, that there is a certain fault line that exists between right and left. We think the fault line actually runs right between our community. We have some actually members of the organizations that are backing our slate who have been really active in building up the communities in Judea and Samaria. And we have others who are very progressive in pushing solutions for peace and standing up for Palestinian rights for many years and decades as well. And in drafting our platform, which we were only able to put a little small paragraph in, but really actually the work that we put in is we realized that we recognize that regardless which side people are coming from, we all love Israel and we all love the Jewish people. And that we recognized in working together that we actually have an ability in our slate to serve as real bridge builders here. And that the delegation coming from America is just only one part of the delegation. There's going to be, as Jeff said at the beginning, 38% of the delegates are coming from Israel itself, and Israeli Jews sometimes see this very differently. And we learned that actually that in having respectful dialogues with each other, and we can get into specific issues, that we learn we can come to some consensus and some, at least if not total consensus, ways to bridge the gaps. And we're hoping to fill that role as a bridge builder in the Congress.
Thank you, Rabbi Herman. Would anybody, I've got Talia Elliot who would like to go next. Talia, you're muted still.
Okay, wait, can you hear me now? Awesome, great. Sorry about that, thank you. Thank you, Margaux, for organizing this, and Shani and IPF Atid. It's extra exciting for me to join because I was an IPF Atid convener in 2018. So it's just nice to be part of this and representing Hatikva on this video, on this call. So to give you a little bit of background on Hatikva and what it is and why it speaks to me. So Hatikva is a progressive platform. It really truly speaks to me and my values. It is the slate that is taking the lead on not just supporting but actively pushing for a two-state solution. To me, that is vital for Israel's future as a secure, viable Jewish homeland that has really influenced the work that I've done with IPF and IPF Atid, with J Street, which is an organization I've volunteered with for years, and that is partnering with the Hatikva slate as well. And it's an issue that you know, I know is of great importance to the IPF Atid community and to Israel Policy Forum as a whole. And so, as I said, Hatikva is the slate that is taking the lead on this issue by way of opposing annexation and occupation. Our platform also pushes for other issues that really resonate with me and with a lot of people who I know are sort of on the more progressive end of things. Our platform includes gender equality in Israel, rights for LGBTQ plus people in Israel, religious and cultural pluralism, environmental protections in Israel, as well as efforts to combat anti-Semitism and white supremacism in North America. I will also just add, I'm really proud of the fact that we have a really inclusive and diverse slate. We were the first slate to commit to 50% or more women. We have a ton of LGBTQ plus leadership on our slate. Gender equity is an important issue to us, and the National Council of Jewish Women is actually an official partner with leadership on our slate. We have 30% of our slate, including myself, under the age of 35, which exceeds the WZC requirements. And our young professionals are really the future leadership of the Jewish community here, with people from Havanim Dror and Hashomer Hatzair and Young Dems and J Street U. So it's a really exciting group of people who have come together. We're also the first slate to reach out to Jews of color, and we're really invested in broadening the base of our community for these elections. We have rabbis on our slate from across denominations. So all in all, it's really a platform that sits squarely with my beliefs and my values, and I'm so proud to support it. And I hope that everybody turns out and votes Hatikva.
Thank you, Talia. So I'm gonna let Rabbi Cosgrove talk about Merkaz.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everybody. It's an honor to be part of this. Thank you for organizing it. And, you know, it's like New Hampshire, you know, like everyone's, you know, trying to sort out what the differences between the various candidates and platforms are. But ultimately, I think we're all on the same page and we're all fighting for the same thing, which is a strong Jewish identity with a strong relationship to Eretz Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael. I represent the Merkaz slate, and look, showing up matters. I think the best thing we can all do is try to mobilize our respective communities, whatever they are, and have a very strong voice that can impact the diaspora-Israel relationship that is central to all of us here. You know, to vote expresses values. Values impact dollars and institutions, and those decisions impact lives. And so the values of the Merkaz slate, which is connected, of course, to Masorti, and which is a conservative movement, is some of the things we've already heard: an open, pluralistic Jewish society, that they're, you know, the restrictions of the Rabbanut take a egalitarian, pluralistic approach to the streams of Judaism, not just at the Western Wall, but bichlal, funding of whether that's in schools, kehilot, congregations, strengthening the ties between American Jews and Israel, combating anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and again, something that many people have mentioned, negotiating a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. You know, what was striking to me, the more I learn, is just the sheer numbers. So whether it's in Israel, Masor, you know, there's a long game to be played. It's one thing to be upset about, you know, the what's going on at the Kotel, but if we want to seed communities that reflect our values, that will one day be Israel's leadership, you know, $661,000 for Masorti Israeli Kehilot, for the youth movement, the training of rabbis, the money that's allocated towards the conservative yeshiva, $20,000, $35,000 for Hanaton, the Masorti conservative kibbutz, and that's not even to mention the Latin American, European, Israeli Jewish educational programs. And so sending over 300 shlichim to Camp Ramah summer camps, the list goes on and on and on. But if there's one thing that I can impress on those who are listening, it's that these are not casual commitments. They matter in people's lives. If you should choose to vote for Merkaz, then it matters for the institutions that depend on these funds, and these funds will help position the institutions we care and love about in a way that will impact lives in Israel, impact Jewish identity globally, and the all-important relationship between the two. So thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Cosgrove. So we are going to open up the Q&A session, but before we do, I have a burning question that I would like to throw out to all of our panelists, which is really kind of a personal one, since this is like a personal representation that you're going to have as a part of your slate, should you be chosen to represent your slate at the World Zionist Congress. I'm curious, like, what issue or issues do you personally want to prioritize if you end up representing your slate at the World Zionist Congress? And I'm throwing that to whoever would like to take it first.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. You can hear me, yes? Okay, great, thank you. So I think, like I mentioned just in my explanation of what the Hatikva platform is, our biggest concern really is pushing for a two-state solution and really just trying to ensure that, we're opposed to annexation, to settlement expansion. And so one of the things that we would push for as a slate is to ensure that no funding goes through, as we've all mentioned, this is over the next 5 years, $5 billion of money that is being, handed out to various, projects. So the idea is to ensure that no funding through the WZO, the JNF-KKL, the Jewish Agency goes in any way to support annexation, steps toward annexation, or to support illegal settlement growth, and to really just make sure that financially we are doing everything that we can to push for two states. I think a couple of other things that we are hoping to accomplish is to ensure that refugees and asylum seekers are treated fairly and with dignity, and that we are hoping to continue to support our work with LGBTQ+ members of our community in Israel and around the globe. And I think one thing because you talked about how personal this is, I just want to throw out there a thing that I learned after I had signed up for this slate, which makes it even more personal to me, which is that my great-grandfather was a member of the Congress in, I think, 1911 and 1913, and it was like the 10th and 11th or something like that. I may be misremembering the numbers exactly, but around that time. And the idea that, I get to do this now and carry forward that legacy is just so special to me. So everything about this feels so exciting to me, and I hope it does to everybody listening as well.
Maybe I'll go next. I'll jump in, building off of what Talia said. Just to correct a few things. First thing that I want to say is that I think that it's important for us to understand what this World Zionist Congress does and what it doesn't do. Okay, I think the great thing about our slate, and I think for the other religious movements, is that we're not necessarily tied to political parties. So we have where Hatikva is the representation of labor and merits parties. So we have the independence to be able to work within the system and create the necessary coalitions that we have to advance our values and our goals. And that's critically important. So I think that all of us want to see peace in Israel. We all, I think most of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but at least, to advance a two-state solution and prevent annexation. The problem is that that's not what this Congress does. I don't think I would be able to say with great integrity that if you vote for us, we'll bring a two-state solution. This is not the elections for the Knesset, this is elections for the World Zionist Congress. Now, what personally for me is two specific things. One is recognition of non-Orthodox Jews. I think that we take that so much for granted here. And as Rabbi Cosgrove was saying, these institutions have the ability of funding programs in Israeli society that help change that map completely. It's a very, very critical source of funding for the liberal movements, and it's able to give recognition to women, LGBTQ issues that all go through our movements. Now, the thing is about the funding of the settlements, I'll just say that it was our coalition together with Labor and Merits and the Hatikva slate that appointed the chair of Kakal, the Jewish National Fund, the Israeli Jewish National Fund, which is different than JNF USA. Just want to make sure that everyone gets that. And it turns out that we learned this past September that he went behind our back and invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the settlements. And we're not talking about just maybe over the Green Line in a southern Jerusalem neighborhood or even in the Gush Etzion area, but deep, deep, deep in areas of Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. And it was because of the people that we appointed, because of our strength as a movement, as the Reform movement, that we were able to blow the whistle on that and to cease all activity heretofore, going forward. And right now we're working on an external investigation into how that happened. So the ability for us to actually work in these institutions and to be able to curb that is critical to our strength and our ability to make a broader coalition with other political parties. And so I am personally looking, very much forward to, as someone who's been at the Congress before and has sloshed through some of those battles that we fight there. It is critically important for us to have a strong showing there because so much is at stake right now in our ability to speak out for basic things like upholding what it says in the Declaration of Independence, that we should have equality of religion, race, sex, creed, all of those things. Those are the things that we debate there at this Congress. And sometimes I'm shocked by people's opposition to those things that I consider to be basic. And sometimes I'm not. And sometimes I have to understand that having a strong movement there is critical to be able to appoint the people who can then set the policy and really focus on what this Congress is able to do and what it's not.
Right, it's Elliot, it's Rabbi Cosgrove. And just to build on what Rabbi Weinberg's saying, look, and I keep saying this, and I'm going to keep saying it, there's a long game to be played here. It's, some people go to J Street Conference, some people go to APAC, people express their concerns about what's going on politically and otherwise in Israel in different ways, and God bless everyone. But here at stake in this election, the World Zionist Congress, is the ability to plant seeds that will bear fruit into the years ahead. My complaint about American Jewry, of which I'm a proud member, is that sometimes we kvetch about Israel because we're afraid to deal with our own surus. I think that here in this election, Israelis should be empowered to actualize their values, which for a whole reason of systemic explanations, of which many of us are aware of, the funding to pluralistic expressions of Jewish life and living are not present as they could and in my opinion should be in Israel. So whether it's a shlichim, an emissary program, whether it's a summer camp, whether it's educators in an Israeli Tali school system, all of these are events and identities and institutions that are in Israel, the products of which will create, not as some sort of vicarious expression of my own values, but actually a homegrown set of lives changed and lived in Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael.
I have an audience question for Rabbi Herman. Let me find the text. Where did it just go?
I saw it. I saw it. So I will actually, and actually we'll segue actually into the answer I was going to give to Margaux's question, so I can actually, answer both. And I saw a few other questions in there that maybe I'll try and get to. So actually, the number one issue that is on our platform, that is certainly a powerful, meaningful issue to me, is that we're looking at a environment where Israeli Jews and American Jews see the world very differently. And we want to strengthen the ties within Am Yisrael and help communities better understand each other. I believe the specific question I got is, which ways are we going to be building bridges and with who? So as an Orthodox organization, we have actually lots of Orthodox colleagues and affiliate Orthodox organizations in Israel. And I will tell you, in the course of many of my travels there, up until 10 years ago, many even modern, open Orthodox rabbis in Israel have never met a Reform or conservative rabbi. Some of their leaders have, and they have lots of perceptions about conservative and Reform Jews that don't necessarily, there are stereotypes and don't necessarily work in reality, whereas Orthodox rabbis and Orthodox Jews in America, where conservative Reform Jews make up a majority, we interact and have positive relations with them on a daily basis. So just even breaking some stereotypes, making some introductions, because when you meet people and get to know people, bridges, can be built, and people understand people a lot better when they've actually, had an opportunity to get to know something. And we've, been able to, change, even not necessarily on a policy level, but some hearts and minds, among the Orthodox establishment in Israel, not within the chief rabbinate itself, which has been taken over just in the last 20 years, but among many of the people who vote for Orthodox parties in Israel, and continue. We will hope to build that in through the Zionist Congress, fund opportunities that can build those type of bridges as well, and provide an Orthodox voice saying that our liberal colleagues and our liberal friends and brothers and sisters are part of the Jewish people, and Israel is a home for them as well, and to give that unique Orthodox voice to it. I think going into some other shows, I saw a question actually also specifically on the marriage issue, so that Israelis can marry without going to Cyprus and the USA. Well, it's not part of our slate's platform, but I believe all of our organizations have actually taken a position, first of all, to support civil marriage in Israel, that people should be able to get married just with a judge. But even beyond that, if you want to talk about, people speak about these things, actually being able to, move the needle and change things. It's actually not speaking from a slate perspective, but my role as the executive director of the International Rabbinic Fellowship. It's one of our members, has probably had the greatest success in challenging the monopoly of the chief rabbinate. He literally built an organization that collapsed the entire chief rabbinate's monopoly over kashrut supervision, through which an organization, I believe was called, just forgot the name of the organization, but they'll come to me. But what they did is they just started giving out private kashrut certifications with lots of use of humor and use of various lawsuits. And actually, at the end of the day, the chief rabbinate no longer has a monopoly on kashrut supervision. Having won that battle, they are now actually moving to weddings, and their organization for weddings is called Chupot, and they're doing weddings outside the auspices of the chief rabbinate, and then defending them, within all of the various Israeli ministries, and they expect to perhaps topple that monopoly also within the next 5 years, and we're certainly supportive of those efforts. I've spoken for a bit. I can speak about bridge building on the security in Palestinian and two-state issues. We are supportive of a two-state solution, but we see opportunities where we can be bridge builders there as well.
Thank you, Rabbi. And you touched on some of the questions I'm now going to ask to the rest. So I have this one here. Is your slate affiliated with an Israeli party? If it is, how do you ensure your independence versus the priorities of the Israeli parties you are affiliated with? Are the parties affiliated with Israeli parties fighting for your values or seeking to further Israeli parties' priorities in securing Israel's place in the WZO? I don't know if this applies to anyone in particular, but feel free to answer that. And then we also had Rabbi Herman respond to the question about how their party would address the issue of civil and religious marriage in Israel. So if you'd like to step in on that one as well, I invite you to do so.
Sure. Our movement is not connected to a political party in Israel, and I think that's one of our strengths, that we're able to be. We have the opportunity to convene and to coalesce with a large progressive bloc, including. Well, we're all watching closely to see what happens on March 2nd in Israel, and after the pieces fall of the Israeli election. Hopefully, this will be the last one for some time. You know, every Monday and Thursday we're having an election, but then we'll be able to work together with as many political parties as possible who are willing to, support our values, and then put together a large progressive bloc, hopefully. So I think that's an advantage for us, that I would say, just basing off of Rabbi Herman on civil and civil marriage and the issues of the Rabbanut. I think this is a central issue. First of all, I am hoping that we're able to put an Israeli government together without some of the Haredi parties, which will in tune put the Ministry of Religious Affairs in Israel not in the hands of the ultra-Orthodox parties. Also hoping that for the Ministry of Interior, which decides on who is a Jew, kind of thing. And I want to support Rabbi Herman's comments about Itim and Hashgacha Pratit, who are really, really critical organizations. I'll say that our rabbis are performing over 1,000 marriages a year. And what's happening is that there's this sort of natural circumvention of the Rabbanut and that people are just resolving to do what we would call in America common law marriage, or Yiduim B'tzibur in Hebrew. And they're just saying, okay, we are basically married, and the wedding, the chuppah that we went to with a reform or conservative or non-Orthodox rabbi is sufficient for us. That's enough. And I think we're going to see that the more that we build up our movements in Israel, the more that we get them out into the public sphere, and then the more Israelis feel that they have access to them and they become more and more mainstream, then the institution of the chief rabbinate will, I do think that it will implode, or will slowly fade away. We don't, as American Jews or as diaspora Jews, we don't affect legislature in Israel. And so if you do, everyone should make Aliyah and vote in the Knesset. But in case you don't, this is the way that we can have a groundswell and build up the movements so that they get a lot of traction and are able to then make change through that way. It's once we have 25,000 couples a year go to Cyprus, and even more go abroad. And so I think that we need to continue to support our rabbis who are offering these services, many of whom receive their salaries through channels coming from the national institutions in Israel, Jewish Agency, WZO, Kakal, and so on and so forth. And so having a strong showing in these institutions is critical to advancing those goals.
Thank you, Rabbi Weinberg. Talia or Rabbi Cosgrove, if you'd like to add anything in about bridge building with Israelis or civil marriage or any of the things that we touched upon before we head to our next question.
Sure. I think in terms of, official party affiliations and bridge building with Israelis, Patikva doesn't have an official affiliation either. We do often, once the Congress is fully formed, there are caucuses and groups that sort of form together coalitions to really push forward specific agenda items. And we often do partner with representatives from groups like Meretz and Labor and to accomplish our goals. I also saw that there was a question in the comments about track record and success for fighting for core IPF values at the Congress. And I wanted to just point out, sort of also going off of something that Rabbi Weinberg said earlier about that we are not, the Knesset, we're not creating two states. And that is true. We are not enacting two states. That being said, we can push for it, and we have pushed for it. And one of the things that Hatikva was able to do in the most recent Congress is we had representatives who chaired the Resolutions Committee on Settlements and led a successful campaign to pass a resolution endorsing a two-state solution and disallowing funding over the Green Line. So while we can't actually enact a two-state solution, we can impact specific funding decisions and choices that are being made that impact facts on the ground. And I think that is hugely important. And I think everything that we're all talking about is important. I don't mean to, put primacy of one thing over the other, but I think the thing that speaks most to me is that, without enacting a two-state solution, without pushing for it, and without working to ensure it, I personally fear for Israel's future existence, whether it's pluralistic or not. So that to me stands out as the highest of, most urgent priorities. And that is why I think Hatikva is my choice of slate.
Hi, it's Elliot, Rabbi Cosgrove. Look, it's like a Jewish conference call. Everyone said it, but not everyone has yet spoken it. So let me take a different question about that was posed to me about if we're all on the same page, why not have a single slate? It's a great question, and look, I think. And I don't mind asking it, and I don't have a crisp answer to that question. I think that the fact of the matter is the success of everyone on this conference call is a shared success for the values that we're all discussing. I think there is a perception issue. One of my great fears of this conversation, politically, culturally, and otherwise, is the stature and the perception of the stature of the diaspora Jewish community in the eyes of Israel, that the writing is on the wall. And so all of the things that all the panelists have said about the substantive impact this election has on institutions and funding, et cetera, hold true. I also don't want to miss the fact that if we successfully shake the bushes and get out the vote, that is a powerful statement unto itself to a much larger conversation about the degree to which diaspora Jewry is or is not invested in the health and well-being of Israel, and maybe the needle can be moved there. But I would hope, if elected to the Merkaz slate, I'm all about reducing duplicative efforts and finding synergies and with a tightening of belts on budgets all around. We should be working together on most things. There are some differences in reform, conservative, otherwise maybe some orthodox, but there's far more shared between us than not. So hope that answers one of the questions.
Thank you, Rabbi Cosgrove. Ooh, do you want to go ahead, Shani?
You can go for it, Margaux.
Okay. So I'm actually really glad that Rabbi Cosgrove brought up that question. And I'd like to sort of throw it back to the rest of the panelists, since we can recognize that there's a lot of shared values amongst this group. I'm curious both about plans among potential representatives for coalition building and cooperation. And also I wonder what coalitions have formed in past Congresses as well, if there's any knowledge about that.
I'd like to publicly say that if Josh Weinberg, Jason Herman, and Talia Ben-Ami offer a place, I will be there and I will buy the beer for everyone.
I do.
I'll make it a scotch.
I
do need it after those sessions at the Congress.
I do think there is a lot of overlap in the work that we all do. I think, there's some overlap in various organizations on Hatikva with specific Israeli parties. There's overlap in the work that Hatikva does and has done in the past with Margaux and with Artza, and with, we're not here to butt heads. I don't think, I don't see this as a debate. I think we're all trying to get out the vote, and we all have, mutual goals. I think we all just have slightly different focuses and prioritizations. So certainly once the Congress convenes, there will be overlap in areas that we can work on and will work on together.
Yeah, totally. I'm in agreement with everyone. I would just say, since 2006, we, as the reform movement, have had a partnership. It's called a faction in the Congress world, with the Labor and Merits parties. So also with the Hatikva slate, and that's been a very strong partnership through up until now. And what I'm worried about is that I think the current trends that we're witnessing in Israel, displaying that those who are pushing for both, let's say, a two-state solution and for religious equality and pluralism, are not leading in the polls right now in Israel, as we can say. And so the Labor and Merits parties have gone from 31 seats in 2015 to projected about 8 in the coming. And so, in the coming elections right now. So I think that it is going to be in all of our advantage to try and create a broad progressive coalition as much as possible. And I want to, we're all waiting to see with whom we might coalesce in the Knesset, and to see who's going to send their representatives. Obviously, the big question is what's going to happen with Kahol Lavan, with the Blue and White Party, as they're a new party essentially, and they have not been in existence for a previous World Zionist Congress. So that would be fascinating to see. And they're a pretty diverse ideological party as well. You have some on the far right and some on the left in their party, and so we'll see who they can be with. It will be fascinating to see. This may not be popular in the IPF scene here, but to see who Avigdor Lieberman joins with, and that we might find some overlap with our desire for religious equality and to end the control or the monopoly of the ultra-Orthodox chief rabbinate. We may not necessarily agree on his political stance, to put it lightly, on some of the two-state and Palestinian issues, and so it's going to be a very, very interesting time. And what I would encourage everyone is to make sure that if you believe in the issues that we've just been discussing, to make sure that we all have a lot of strength going into this Congress.
Okay, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're running a little low, so I think what I'm going to do is throw out one last question, which is, what is your top reason why diaspora Jews should vote in these elections?
I can jump off here. Look, I think I'm not saying much that hasn't been said already, but this, there's a lot of talk often that, we're American Jews, what say do we have about what happens in Israel? This is it. We have other times where we can make our voices heard, but this is, I think Rabbi Cosgrove said this, although I may be misremembering, this is our democratic moment. We get to have an official vote, and I think, in the US, we know how important elections are. In Israel, we know how important elections are. If you get a chance to have a vote and to have your voice heard in that way, take it, use it. What an amazing opportunity that is. Don't let it slip you by.
Talia, thank you. Anytime that something that Rabbi Weinberg says is attributed to me, it's a pleasure.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
So look, I think it's right. This is our chance to show up. This is our chance to be present. This is our chance to have our voices heard. And you know, I spend a lot of my time talking and teaching and trying to give voice to these values. This is actually something we can do. And there are real numbers, real funding decisions being made, real staffing decisions and board of directors decisions, and you know, both from the grassroots level to the leadership level, the decisions made as a result of this election will have implications in the lives of Israelis and in world Jewry. And so it's a great opportunity to be engaged.
Happy to go next, or Jason, if you know.
No, you can go.
Yeah, I'll just build on what everyone else is saying, is that, yeah, this is, of course, our only democratic opportunity to have our voice heard in Israel. And, you know, I talk to a lot of Jews here in the United States who feel so deep and so deeply and so passionate about what's going on in Israel, and sometimes feel helpless. And when I say to them, okay, so what are you going to do? Are you going to make Aliyah and vote in the Knesset? Not likely. Are you going to fund an entire political party in Israel? No. Are you going to buy your own newspaper and call it Yisrael Machar, for instance, like the popular Yisrael Hayom funded by Sheldon Adelson? They say, no, we're not going to do any of that. We can't do that. I say, okay, well, here's something that you can do. And it just costs you $7.50, or if you know, you're under 25, $5. And as we've all said, it really, really does have impact. And I'll tell you something, that when I spent, every time I visit Israel and we have meetings with Knesset members, I've had Knesset members from each party, not just the left-wing parties, take me to the side and say, hey, are you guys organizing? We want to hear your voice. We need to hear your voice. You have an important message for us, for in Israel, and we need to strengthen those ties together. So you better get all those American Jews to vote in this. I said, okay, I'm trying. But they are watching, and this is really critical right now. And so that's why I'm thankful to the Israel Policy Forum, and thank you to Jason, to Talia, and to Elliot, who's been my teacher for gosh, almost 20 years now. And so it's a pleasure, and I really look forward to seeing you all together around that table in Jerusalem in October.
Okay. I would share pretty much what everyone else has said, but I would also, just to echo actually what Jeff Becker began with in the beginning, you know, to understand the importance, it is worthwhile just spend a few minutes, if you haven't yet voted, before you vote, look into the 4 organizations that the Zionist Congress tremendously impacts, which is the Jewish Agency, the World Zionist Organization, Karen Kayemet, which is JNF, and Karen Hayesod. Look at what those organizations do, the influence that those organizations have, particularly on the relationship between the State of Israel and Jews outside of Israel. That's actually now the mission of the Jewish Agency, is that to particularly be that bridge between Israel and Jews outside. So if you want to say in how that relationship works, familiarize yourself with these organizations, and then think about who do you want to be appointing the leadership and the directors for those organizations. And that's how you're, you know, that's the manner in which your voice is really going to be directed, not just at the Congress, but on a day-to-day level, you know, for the next 4 to 5 years. And it was a pleasure, again, I'll, you know, include saying being with all of you and being with, you know, Josh, Elliot, and Talia, all my friends. And I'm looking forward to, as Josh just said, grabbing the beer or the scotch in October in Jerusalem, and, you know, hearing from all of you.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This call is a recording, or there is a recording of this call, so I'm going to send it out afterwards in case you'd like to send it around. I'm also going to remind you that the election site is azm.org//elections. I think I got that right. I think someone would correct me if I was wrong. And since I work at Israel Policy Forum, I have to also remind you the Israeli elections are coming up. And we have our election site up, which is israelpolicyforum.org/elections3, because it's the 3rd round this year. Thank you all so much. I'm in Israel, so it's nighttime. I think it's not really night for you, but have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good night. Sleep
Thank
well there.
you. Bye.
Go vote.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.